Thick as a brick. I did several posts on the same day, this day, where this is being played, or was being played, and it's spinning in the background as I do my posts in this spot. So you're probably wondering, hey, what's the deal with Thick as a Brick? Well, here it is. JETHRO TULL. This is the album after Aqualung, which was their first big breakout here in America. And I don't know if Living in the Past came out before or after this. Living in the Past was a compilation of some live cuts, single cuts from England, stuff that you may have missed in the US. Quite good compilation, as is, and Aqualung's quite a good album. And this then came out, and I remember reading, I think it was Dave Marsh, decrying this as over-the-top, bombastic concept album. Who do they think they are? This is ridiculous. This is when music went off the rails. He was writing a retrospective review. It wasn't from '72 when this came out. And just lumping this in with all this stuff like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and yes, that was, 6 LPs, and everything with names like The Sunrise, The Morning. Chicago would do that too on their double albums after Chicago 3 was the first one where they started doing nutty stuff like that. Chicago 2, kind of like that too. Chicago, the first one named, okay, let me back up. First album called Chicago Transit Authority, black cover, great. Bluesy. A little bit of pretense with the whole world is watching and whatnot, but generally fine. Second album, just called Chicago. They had to shorten the name because Mayor Daley, I think, threatened them and said, you can't name yourselves after our subway. Or the L, as it's really called. So the second album was just called Chicago. Now it's called Chicago 2 because it's the second one. Also a double album. Pretty good. Some of that does get, it's like, okay, you guys, you know what? You're great. Like, I think there's a song called An Hour in the Shower. It's enough already with that. But it's got some great stuff like Where Do We Go From Here, or 25 or 624, the most Hendrix-ish Hendrix thing. We're talking more about Chicago than JETHRO TULL. Anyhow, starting with the third album, which was also a double album, they got nutty. The fourth album was, I think, 4 discs, live at Carnegie Hall. Both of those, Chicago 3 and 4, that's when they went off the rails. So the first 2 I recommend. And nowhere near as bombastic as the later stuff, or self-important or pretentious, nor as self-important as pretentious as Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and yes, and I would not group this into that category. This is actually quite good. The opening cut, the title track, Thick as a Brick, which was released as a single, it's on all their best ofs, that's pretty entertaining. It's not the greatest thing, and in fact they made fun of it. Martin Prince dances around to it on an episode of The Simpsons. You can Google that. But the rest of the album's actually quite good. It holds together. It kind of reminds me a little of a more accessible, better flowing version of Tubular Bells, if that makes sense, with vocals, obviously. And I like it, and everyone I've played it for usually likes it. This is a chrysalis pressing from the early 70s, and the packaging is actually, I'm not going to take the whole thing out. Oh, I might as well. And it's essentially a newspaper. See? It actually folds open like a newspaper. Where is it? Like this. Kind of reminds me of Live at Leeds, which folded open like a folder bootleg. Oh, and this is paper, and I've never gone through this whole thing. That would take forever, but it looks just like a newspaper. So a good album. They were tight with their ideas. It wasn't over the top. Good playing, nice packaging, and I will say I've had about 4 copies of this in my life, all on this green chrysalis label. I think these were pressed by Warner Brothers, if memory serves, and they all sound pretty good. I just seem to be a magnet for copies of this with the original packaging. I don't know when they discontinued this original packaging and maybe went to a more standard sleeve, or if they ever did, but you would think they would. It seems expensive and complicated to produce. Maybe just put it all in a book or something. But I always liked it, and I've had several copies of this, and oddly enough, despite the intricate packaging and the fact the album's pretty good, and it comes just after Aqualung, it's not that popular as far as resale or giving away. I think most people either have the image in their head that this is bombastic like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and yes, or they're just not interested in JETHRO TULL, or they just want a couple hits and that's it. But it's too bad. I would recommend you go online. You can get a copy real cheap with nice packaging, and this is the whole reason that vinyl has come back, not just for the sound and sound quality and good music, but for nice big packaging that's not some tiny thumbnail photo.